be just sexual intercourse, and that's not what it is only. You see, so that's where the problem is.
So how do you define
Yeah.
sexuality in that
Sexuality
case?
has to do with all kinds of things. It has to do with touch, feels.
No, it has
smell,
to do with
everything.
No, it has to do with the literature,
You know,
literature and the literature of of romance from the very early beginning.
I mean, what to have, but I mean,
Because
I'm talking about in the life of a person.
Look,
you know.
Kama
from that
Sutra.
point of view,
Absolutely.
it's a
Yeah.
cumulative
So he did
experience.
denounce the common.
It is
Oh,
a-
he loved the company of women, for example.
Yes.
Absolutely loved the company. In fact, his two grandnieces were with him until the last day. Until the last day. In fact, the day he was shot dead, he was accompanied by Manu and Abba.
Yeah.
And, he
But
was surrounded by women constantly.
Yeah.
And in fact, there were lots of platonic affairs. I mean, there are letters written by a number of women running into the hundreds, and replies by Gandhi to them.
Yeah.
So, this is where, but yeah, I mean, if you're speaking about sex in the literal sense of the term, which includes
Then he did
intercourse, yeah, then when he took the vow of brahmacharya, he did. Yeah.
but
But he also went to bed naked with women towards the end of his life, but didn't have sex with them, Yeah.
but isn't
That's
that
kind of curious behavior.
isn't that like doing like a strip dance where you can't touch? It's just frustration.
No, but there it has to do with relationships of power too. I mean, it has to do with the commercialization of sex. So, उसमें तो बहुत कुछ आ गया. The strip dance, and you flashing around dollars and inserting it, in the woman, or this and that. It's a commercialization of sex and advertising and merchandising of women. That's no. I mean,
But isn't it an injustice to the woman? He's lying next to it.
well, but you'd have to know the whole story, no? I mean, it's not like he was doing that for 30 years.
That is directly related to the economic activity. So first you have to say the injustices of the economic activity, and then you come to that other point. You cannot disregard the injustices of economic activity without having to get to that point. First you
Yeah.
have to discuss the injustices of economic activity. You cannot just leapfrog to that point without having to discuss that. And that is what most of the people do. They think that they take the whole injustices of economic activity as a prima facie, on a face value, and then they jump to that other aspect. And that is where the biggest mistake is made. So until and unless you decry that, you will not be able to discuss that.
So there was some kind of romance, but it was platonic romance that he had.
In Gandhi's case.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the platonic means you don't have a sexual relationship, but I mean, it's more complicated than that because it's not only platonic relationships. It's, as I said, you have to really make that distinction between,
Yeah, I think
sex and sexuality, where sexuality has to do with
a lot of things.
It
has
lots
a lot
of things. It has
lots
to do
of
with
things.
touch, feel, smell, the aesthetics
The
of
whole-
it.
Yeah,
whole-
just
the
yeah,
whole
just aesthetic
the whole
part.
romanticism of the human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you would call that would be romantic interest. He had romantic interest.
Well, I
in
don't know
other
if
women.
but romantic is a problem here because romantic in the English language
It was very different.
has it veers into the physicality of sex very quickly.
Yeah.
You see, that's the problem.
So,
And it's
so
not complete
is
without
there-
that aspect.
Yeah.
कोई
yeah.
हिंदी में कोई और लफ्ज़ है more appropriate?
यार यहाँ पे मेरा ख्याल है वो पॉइंट आ गया यहाँ बैरियर्स लैंग्वेजेस के जो है ना वो विजिबल हो जाते हैं.
Ah.
Probably there is no word.
Well, I don't know.
But you can understand where he was.
But when-
You can say.
when you say-
नहीं, जैसे भक्ति जो है, आप-
You can say ishq.
Well, I don't know if you know Bhakti,
Bhakti movement,
if you know
yeah.
Bhakti literature from India, from the 8th century till the 16th century. Do you know that literature at all?
No.
Kabir.
You see,
Okay.
it's a huge strand of literature. huge strand of literature going from South India all the way to the north, west, east, Kashmir. So Bhakti literature में one of the dominant ideas has to do with, जैसे मीरा भाई और जो है वो, she is a bhakt of Krishna. Okay. Now it's tinged by eroticism, the poetry. There's no question about it. But of course, it works at number of layers because it's purely metaphorical as well. But the tinge of eroticism is important because the idea is that you shouldn't be able to render it only at one level of interpretation. You see, आपको मैं एक किस्सा सुनाता हूँ. One of the more interesting examples of this, probably, and one of the more difficult examples. So there is Krishna जो हैं, there are basically two Krishnas in Indian literature. One is a kind of a historical Krishna who has not interested anybody in India forever. Only in the late 19th century did some interest begin in him, and that had to do with nationalism. Okay, and that's the Krishna really in a way of the Mahabharata. Okay, then the dominant Krishna is a Krishna of the Puranic literature and the Bhakti poets and all of that. So he is the Krishna who dances with 1,000 gopis, Ras Leela. Okay, he is a Krishna who steals the butter. Makhan Chor. Okay,
the whole Bharatanatyam, they do that.
I mean, and it's full of it. All of literature, poetry, music, painting, full of it. So down to the present day. Okay, now one of the most famous episodes from that life of Krishna, okay, is the scene called Vastra Haran. Vastra, kapde, Sanskrit. Haran is theft, the theft of clothes. तो गोपियाँ जो हैं वो एक दिन नदी के किनारे पे जाती हैं और कपड़े उतार देती हैं और पानी के अंदर छलांग मारती हैं, नहाने लग जाती हैं, स्नान ले रही हैं. तो कृष्ण वहाँ आता है, बांसुरी के साथ बजा रहा होता है, देखता है अरे यार गोपियां हैं वहाँ, कपड़े हैं, तो कपड़े उठा के कपड़े चुरा के पेड़ के ऊपर बैठ जाते हैं.
अच्छा.
तो जब वो नहा चुकी होती हैं, वो निकलने वाली होती हैं नदी से, तो उनको शर्म आती है क्योंकि कपड़े नहीं दिखते हैं. अब वो निकले कैसे नदी से? हाउ शुड दे कम आउट? ठीक है ना. तो वहां से वो सीटी मारता है, अरे देखो कपड़े तो मेरे पास हैं. By the way, this, the Hindu nationalists of the 19th century said, यार शर्म की बात है, भगवान है, भगवान कैसी चीजें कर रहा है. But this is the strength of that religion, if you ask me, of that whole tradition in a way. Because you have to understand the different idioms in which these characters operate. So वो जो है वो, but we'll leave that aside for a second. Let me finish the story. So Krishna says, you come out if you want the clothes. And they say, हम कैसे बाहर कैसे आ सकते हैं, शर्म आ रही है हमें तो. And then Krishna says, now this is where you see there are multi-layered interpretation, because it's erotic. There's no question about it. The painters who have shown these gopis absolutely nude, right? I mean, where it becomes interesting is, so Krishna says, and you find this in some of the Puranas. Some of the Puranas have a different reading of it. He says, when you come to God, you have to come naked.
Absolutely.
Which means you have to strip yourself of the ego completely.
Yeah.
Completely. Now that's, by the way, an argument you will find in almost all religions.